please join me in welcoming Bassem Youssef and Sara Taksler.
There you go.
No, you're the director. Okay. Hi.
Hi,
guys.
welcome to Google.
Oh, guys, the voice quality here is amazing.
It is.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you do pay a lot of money.
Spare
to
no
do
expense.
Stuff very nicely here.
Thank you.
Everything.
Thank you.
I'm very surprised and very happy that many of you left all of the temptations and the restaurants and the food and the ping pong tables to come here. So
There's
thank you.
free food literally across the hall.
I
And
know.
all of these people for
I
like
have seen it. I have eaten in like 5 different restaurants today.
Perfect.
Like,
We've already decided that we're going to finish this and eat again before we leave.
Yes.
So-
Absolutely. Ticket to go bag,
Yes.
line your pockets,
Yes.
the whole lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so thank you for coming, first of all. I wanted to start by just saying there's a scene in this film where 2 of your producers are sitting on a couch, and they say to each other, you know, I remember when we were afraid to talk about politics in a taxi. We were afraid to talk about politics in public. And then Bassem happened. So that Bassem is our guest, of course, today. And you're trained as a cardiothoracic surgeon, but you're best known throughout the Middle East and in Egypt especially as the host of Bernameg. If any of you haven't seen the film, it's hard to overstate exactly how popular this series has been. 40 million weekly views? Okay, so to put that in perspective, Jon Stewart's Daily Show at its height got about 2 million, and the population of Egypt is about 90 million.
100 now.
100 now?
We reproduce very fast.
Okay, very good. Good on you.
Turn
Now
the
that
other
the show's
side.
off, they have nothing
that's
to do.
exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, they have nothing
Now
else
that
to
you've
do.
left,
It's
they
like
really kicked it into
they
high
need to
gear.
fill their time with other productive, literally productive activities.
So the story of the film is really, it chronicles your rise to stardom and your first encounters with the government. It starts as sort of a trickle, and then it becomes more serious as the Arab Spring and the transition from the Mubarak to the Morsi to the Sisi governments. Can you just catch us up on all of this? What is the state of politics in Egypt today, and where has it come?
Do you have
since
5
Mubarak?
hours? Okay.
You have about 30 seconds.
All right, very.
The Arab Spring, in a
very fast. Okay, so since 1950s, Egypt and most of the Arab countries are under military dictatorships. That we were told from a very young age that these were amazing revolutions, but these were military coups that were like turned into military rule. And there was always this kind of very delicate balance between dictatorship and a cartoonish or fake kind of opposition. They were allowed to be present, but it's not really. It's just like it's event. It's an act. And when the revolution happened, it was the first time that for the first time that authority were afraid of the people, not the opposite. For the first time, comedy was directed to authority, not towards people. We have a very long tradition of comedy in the Middle East, especially in Egypt. But mostly it was only social comedy. We were allowed to make fun of ourselves, but and kind of like hint very remotely to authority. But that was the first time that we would go like heads on against authority.
So the revolution you're talking about is the overthrow of Hosni Mubarak.
Yes.
So what were you doing at that point?
At that time, I was just like a doctor, like trying to stitch people in Tahrir Square, like stitch as in like taking stitches. Is there other meanings? Anyway, so and at that time, what inspired us to start this is that there were 2 different realities. There's the reality in the Tahrir Square, when you see it's a revolution, people standing up, people rising, and there's their reality on television, which is state-run, absolutely skewed, false information. So we had fake news before you ever heard this term, and I'm glad that you're following suit and you're catching up with our leadership and our for once we're pioneers at something, and. No, seriously. All of that stuff about like Obama being a secret Muslim and he founded ISIS. We had that way before you. So it's time for you to catch up. And so we had this. We have this like all kind of like conspiracy talk, and that like how this is not a revolution. It's a conspiracy. So this was making me and a lot of people very angry. And after everything settled down, something had to be made to remind people that this is what they were consuming. And we made fun, and we showed what kind of pointed, directed propaganda that was used in order to alienate people against the revolution. And this is how it all started. At that time, I didn't expect that a lot of people would watch it. I mean,
So how did it start? How did you do your first show?
In my laundry room, I got like one table, one camera, and $100 like banner behind me that showed like pictures, different like a collage from the Tahrir Square scenes, and and at that time I was getting ready to leave to the United States because I was accepted in a pediatric heart surgery fellowship in Cleveland, and out of all places, and nothing tells you how excited I was leave or how desperate I was to be excited to go to Cleveland, and yeah.
And what was your success like early on?
Not going to Cleveland. Sorry, go on.
No, so you started your show.
Yeah.
And how did people receive it?
I was expecting 10,000 views, and in less than, like after very few weeks, I had 5 million.
So
and I know
more.
that 5 million doesn't sound a lot now. Yeah, you can't get that kind of views. But at that time, 2011, Egypt, that was a big deal. And suddenly I had every single TV station coming up and trying to sign me up. And I was put in a choice. Should I go and continue my work as a doctor and heal hearts, or sell out and take the money, which I did. And I did that, and I continued and stayed in Egypt. And I was terrified. I didn't know the first thing about doing a show, or let alone doing a TV show. And we started from a small TV show. Then after one season, I decided I am done with small shows on television. I want to do live audience. And again, that was a concept that was not even in the Arab world. Having people coming, real people, not paid people coming in and watch a show and follow and react and laugh and clap, that was not a concept that was in the Arab world. And I said, like, well, I want to go to the source. I want to know how this is done. I went to New York, and I met with Jon Stewart team, and this is where I met Sara. And Sara said, for some reason, she will explain why now, that like she wanted to do a documentary about me. It's
So
like
Sara knew then. That
she found that my story is very interesting, and she's like, can I do a documentary about it? I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And it's like,
This is the day we met.
I mean, who would say no to this? I mean, if there's a documentary done about me, you're either dead or an endangered species. So like for me, to have a documentary done
And he
about
is
me,
one of the two.
yes,
Definitely.
and almost was the other, but so she said, like, can you do that? And we thought that this would be like a 9-month project, and it continued.
Well, his show
for
wasn't
months.
on the air yet, in front of a
gonna
live
say,
audience, so there was no
why
way to
this
know
guy?
that it was going to be such a huge story. And I mean, I was just interested. I was interested that they were doing the same thing that I do at the Daily Show, but with such high stakes. But also, I just couldn't imagine Jon Stewart being a heart surgeon during the day, and then at night hosting the show. And that was what Bassem was still doing at the time. He was still a heart surgeon. So I knew they were going to leave the next day, and I just didn't want to regret not having asked. And I felt like he would be a really great character. So I asked if he could make a movie. But neither of us knew that the story would become even such higher stakes. And pretty soon after that, he started to get called in for questioning by the government about jokes.
Yeah, but what's also the other reason he did the movie? My crew.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I thought was really interesting was he came with maybe 4 producers, and 2 of them were women. And I was just
And
very
for that,
curious.
oh my God, women in the Middle East
Well,
are allowed
and
to leave
I
home.
was no, not that. I was just curious what it would be like to be my counterpart as like a woman working at a comedy show in Egypt. I was very curious what that atmosphere would be like. And then when I got there, it was such a non-event. Like at least half the office, maybe 3/4 of the office were actually women, and it didn't end up becoming part of the story we told because it was not really a big deal there.
So this is when his fame was rising, but when did the stakes start to rise? When did you start to feel a little sense of friction between you and the government?
Right in like after the 2nd episode of the new season of the live show, because at that time the Muslim Brotherhood they kind of took control of the presidency, and I was just making fun of them, and everybody was starting to watch the show, and it was increasing by the millions, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 millions, and like it was increasing, and I became a kind of a thorn in the side of authority and their media. There were Islamic media that were like hated me and yet would play hours and hours of my show. It was as if they were doing my second run, which half of the people who were watching me were hate watching me, and they were doing very well for the ratings, which is great.
Do you think it was your fame or the content that sort of caught their attention first?
No, it's more complex than this. You see, we belong to a certain culture where making fun, not even making fun, opposing or arguing or going against the power and authority is something that's not very popular. From a very young age, we are taught that there's the father figure, and then the teacher who's another father figure, and then there's the headmaster, and then your boss, and then your leader, and then your president, and then your sheikh. All of these authorities are there is some kind of a taboo to go against the authority, and there's also a tendency in the Middle East where someone who would attain a certain type of authority, that he would link himself to the ideology. So if he's an Islamic president, you make fun of him, you make fun of Islam. If he's a military president, you make fun of him, you're making fun of patriotism and the military. So that was the biggest thing. So you go in, people's like, oh, how come you make fun of like an Islamic praying president? And the same thing happened when Sisi came up. It's like, oh my God, you're making fun of our president, you're a spy, you're a CIA operative, which was published in black and white that I was trained by the CIA, recruited by Jon Stewart.
That's right. I believe
it's
everywhere
true.
I read
I'm not making this up. I'm not seriously. You cannot make
Jon Stewart trained CIA operative.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll get to that.
That's why John didn't have time to be a heart surgeon, because he had to work at the CIA.
That's right. All the training, the recruiting.
That's why the CIA are
side,
actually really going down, because if they can only find John.
I mean, 40 million a week. That's pretty good for government work.
That's true.
So why were you arrested?
There was a warrant for my arrest, and I went to question for 6 hours, and I ended up paying bail, and I went out. So I was released on bail, and that there was accusations of that I insulted Islam, that I have insulted the president, spreading rumors, disturbing the peace, which is a very vague accusation. It's very easy to get you in jail. And and it was funny because for 6 hours I was being asked about why are these jokes funny, which is the worst thing that you can do to any comedian. And I think they didn't care about actually arresting me. They wanted to demoralize, they want to destroy my morals, and yeah.
So I think this is a really interesting point, because for those of us who pay attention to sort of the struggle for human rights around the world, there's a tendency to sort of glaze over the mechanics of censorship and to present it as very much like there are heroes in a struggle against bad people. But one thing that this film does really well, and I'd love it if you could talk about it, Sara, is it explores the day-to-day life of somebody making controversial content. The sort of quotidian experiences of somebody yelling at you on the street, or of your parents saying maybe you shouldn't do this, or of a studio executive applying subtle pressure before the government actually comes and censors. What is it like in the journey of working your way up to having the government arrest you?
Well, in terms of...
And what was that like,
the storytelling
that experience?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Tickling Giants it's about Bassem, but it happens to be about Bassem, and it's about Egypt and the Arab Spring, but that just happens to be the backdrop. The story for me was, that's so cool. This guy who's a very ordinary guy sees his country going through a hard time and decides to do something about it. That's what the story is. And most people are not going to have their country fall into revolution and then decide to start a comedy show and have it be the most popular comedy show in history. That's not going to be a very common experience. But,
and you didn't know any of that when you started
No,
filming,
I didn't.
Right?
I just knew that I found him to be an interesting character.
Not
with
even
smart
funny.
things
She
to
doesn't
say.
think I'm
Well, I
funny.
don't find him funny personally,
an excuse
but
to travel to Egypt.
I don't find
it's not
him
my taste.
funny.
But
Right, yeah, exactly.
yeah, no,
I don't blame him.
I like the idea of Tickling Giants is like finding a creative, nonviolent way to express yourself. And less than a mile away from Bassem's office, people were killing each other in Tahrir Square to be heard, and his team was finding a creative way to be heard, and because they were choosing nonviolence, their voices were so much louder, and that really intrigued me.
Well, what is it like when you have a conversation with your studio exec? Are they saying, "Can you tone it down? Look, let's be real. If you keep up with this, they're going to throw you in jail"?
There were hardly any conversation. They were because during the Muslim Brotherhood, I was the darling of the studio, because they were against the Muslim Brotherhood, so they kind of let me do whatever I want. And then once they the revolution or slash coup happened in after the Muslim Brotherhood, they were pretty much pro-military, and the military, you would understand if you live in the Middle East and especially Egypt long enough, you'll understand and you'll realize that the military is even more sacred than religion. People like revere military above all. The army is just like untouchable, and and the dynamics were different because like under Morsi there were like pro-Islamic and anti-Islamic media, so it was equal. People were just like clashing at each other.
And they sort of made gestures that they were going to expand freedom of expression under Morsi, right?
To what?
To expand freedom of speech under Morsi, right? Well,
To
that was
expand?
sort of right. I thought I read that when Morsi became president, that he made gestures that he was actually willing to have more free speech.
Yeah,
than in
he
the
was
past,
willing,
right?
but what was happening was like more pressure on freedom of expression. But at least there were some more kind of like a conflict.
Right.
Like, but like with the military came, there's no conflict because all of the pro-Islamic channels were closed down, and I was happy at the beginning because they were channels that were spreading hate and racism. But then the pro-military channel did the same thing. And under the military, we were the only dissenting voice. There was no other. Everybody was praising the military. And then it took them one episode to close me down, just to suggest some satirical jokes about what happened. And I found myself unemployed for 4 months until I found another channel. And then 11 weeks into that, I got shut down again. And people were either apathetic or welcoming or just like very angry but couldn't do anything. Under the military, it's just like you cannot, this is the one force that you cannot really go against.
So you just get an email one day that says,
It's, no, so they actually broke up with me on national
Post-it
TV.
note.
We didn't know, we used to air at 10 p.m. Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
So 10:05 Friday, the show was not aired, and like they came up with a statements like we regret that we cannot continue doing, and we shot the episode and waiting for. We didn't know we were watching it, and I having like calls of what happens, like I don't know. So that was.
We thought there were technical difficulties because there were watch parties where people would just gather in the streets to watch the episode.
Yeah, they were like
cafes.
it's kind of like Super Bowl. People like watching and waiting, and then they said like, well, the show is canceled, and there was like a whole anger, but like so it's kind of like a 2 levels up, being someone breaking up with you on WhatsApp.
But throughout this process, or Google Hangouts, throughout this process, you're experiencing. We're on brand here. Come on.
Sorry.
They're just gonna yank me off stage if I don't do that.
I shouldn't even mention Facebook then.
That's okay. That's okay. Throughout this process, you're experiencing pressure from the government, but there must be societal, cultural, your friends, people the film portrays really vividly sort of the experience of your staff walking in and out of the office and having to go around and not be seen together and not be seen looking out the windows. What was it like producing this documentary and producing the show in that kind of climate?
So for me, we had a kind of a culture and generational divide because many of my staff had to come against the will of their parents.
Right.
Because, especially under the military, many of my family kind of went against me, and they believed the fact that I was a spy and I was paid by America. And people that I went with to school for 20 years, known them for friends for 20 years, started to doubt my intentions. I lost like the amount of people that I lost, and I came out of my life that I blocked on Facebook was a lot. And it was very hard because like here there was just like a bunch of people shouting death threats to you in the streets, and it's not even the government. It's like people that you knew all your life, people that were your flesh and blood who went against you, and that was very difficult. But then I was like, you know what, screw them.
So Sara, you start off wanting to make a documentary about an interesting person that sort of exemplifies the story of using comedy as a weapon in politics. Did you ever have a moment where you said, uh-oh, I might need to get out of here, this is not safe, or?
There were a few moments where it felt a little questionable. I mean, one, Bassem mentioned, I was there when the show got canceled the first time, and I was sitting in someone's house who worked with the show, and we were watching it on TV, and she was like, you should leave. You have footage that they're going to want you to have. And I was supposed to fly out 2 days later, and I was at the airport, and as my drives were going through security, I had just seen Argo. That was out of the time, and I was like, I just couldn't wait for like the plane to get into the air.
The filmmaker.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
But within the office, I mostly felt very safe because the people I was with were the people who liked to work at a comedy show. Like it was very familiar for me. But there were certain times, like when they were first told that there were going to be some protesters showing up. There had been people posting on the internet, and there were concerns that it might be violent. And so they told the staff that they didn't have to come in the next day of the taping. And so some people on the staff looked pretty nervous, and I was like, oh, if they don't come in, I don't have to come. And so I was kind of like, don't come in, because I was scared. And they went around the room, and they were like, are you going to come? Are you going to come? And everyone was like, yeah, I'll be here. I'll be here. And I was like, oh, man, if they're brave, I have to be brave. So I really took my cues from the staff, and they consistently stepped up.
And there's one time that like there was really violent, and I was calling Sara to come, and she was in America. And like
so someone from his staff was like, you might not want to come right now, things are really bad. So I talked to Bassem to ask his opinion, and he said, you know, look, I'm going to be there, my staff's going to be there. Worst case scenario, a producer from The Daily Show gets blown up and I get tons of press. So I think you should come. And I went, so.
It'd be huge. So this segues, I think, to another topic that I wanted to cover, which is that, like, you know, the Committee to Protect Journalists awarded Bassem the International Press Freedom Award, I think, in 2013. And there's a tendency with people who advocate for free speech to sort of lionize these people, you know, declare them living saints, like they can do no wrong, they have to never be afraid. And something that I think the film touches on in a really human way is the personal cost of this day to day, the cost on your family, on your daughter, on the staff, and it makes real the fact that this is a really stressful situation, you know, and acknowledging that you're going to have to go off air. Bassem, when you were doing the Q&A on your last live show, and the audience was sort of heckling you basically at one point, saying, you know, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? Stand up to them. You know, you sort of very earnestly say, like, I'm working on it, but I can't right now.
So this was not the only. This was actually like members of the press who were kind of like they kind of showed their disappointment of me, how I'm being not brave enough to stand up. And the guy who was leading that kind of hacking, I met him in Germany 3 days later, and he came up and he apologized, and it's like, I'm sorry, I escaped to Egypt shortly after you did, and from Egypt, and I'm very sorry that like I didn't understand. I didn't understand the kind of pressure that you're under, and people were kind of like hanging on. It was not anger at me as much as the anger of the whole situation, that this kind of hope that they had is being taken away, because I was not the first to be taken off the air. There was like, it happened very slowly, but we were the biggest. So when that happened, people were just waiting. They looked at us at the thermometer of freedom. If that show is off the air, that's it. We are like back to square one again. And when that happened, people were even more angry at me, not at what happened. It's like, guys, like I'm not the bad guy here.
Well, that's kind of what I want to get at. I mean, can you talk about how do you calibrate sticking with it versus knowing that you need to sort of accede to the government's demands, or when you decide to leave Egypt?
Not demands. Like, I mean, you either say what's right or you don't say it at all. Okay. Because I was giving other options. I was giving an option to stay and play along.
Okay.
And be part of that pre-revolution.
So they were going to let you keep the show if you basically
and triple my salary and everything. Okay. Like it was on the table, and it was just, and even after I left, there were trials to bring me back. Every couple of months there was someone who called me. It's like, we'd like to get you back, and it's like, what do you mean to get back? It's like, well, you can get back and say whatever you want, but there's going to be some understanding.
Right.
And understanding in that lingo means that we're gonna review your script.
Do you still get those calls?
Oh yeah. I mean,
okay.
That very recently. I mean, and the thing is, like, my answer was always the same. It's like, I cannot be a makeup on the face of your regime. You want me back just to save face, to tell people that we have democracy. Here's the Bernameg and Bassem Youssef. You know, he's back and everything is good. But it's not, because many of my friends, many of them are in jail. Many of them are disappeared. Many of them are not living anymore. They got killed or deceased because of it. So you cannot go back with a good heart and say like, hey, let's make fun of things, you know. So it is. First of all, I always say this, and I make some people angry when I say comedians and satirists they're not freedom fighters, they're not activists. They are someone who try to say their opinion in a different way. Nobody should get hurt if they would to tell their opinion. And even like when Jon Stewart, like when in the middle between the first and the second time I was banned, he said like, man, it's not. He was calling me saying it's not worth it.
Right.
Your safety is more important. So it is not. There's no reason like to play chicken and jeopardize your life and other lives around you.
And that was towards the end of the show. It was hard because I didn't know what to root for as someone who like has lived my life in comedy and who loves satire. The show was very symbolic for me too. Like I think a lot of the people in Egypt. But once you become friends with Bassem and the team, that's more important. And so you kind of hope the show ends so that they can be safe and mentally safe as well.
Is that your advice? That was your advice at the
no,
time?
No, it wasn't. We were just we didn't know what was going to happen, and the way we ended up structuring the film was like the first part of the film is about what the situation is in this fight for free speech, and then the middle of the film is this external battle and the government and protesters and different people putting pressure, and then the third part of the film is the internal battle, where you think you're just doing something that sounds fun and feels important and feels good, and then suddenly everyone has an opinion on it, and not just strangers, like his family, and it was his wife and his daughter, and his parents were affected, and so like it becomes harder to do a job just because it matters to you. You're dealing with safety.
I think one of the most powerful scenes in the film, you could blink and miss it, but it's when I think your grandfather,
my father,
your father just says, "I'm proud of you."
Yeah.
And like imagining the context of the Egypt that he grew up in, standing backstage at a huge, shiny studio, and he just said, "I'm proud of you." And it was very like matter of fact. But I think it exemplified a lot of people's feelings. I do want to be conscious of time, and I know that there are probably questions in the audience. If you do, line up at one of these microphones, and depending on how friendly you look, we'll call on you.
Yes, I mean, like, please, can I have like one friendly reporter?
Some softballs first. Okay, well here's a softball.
Somebody can give me a friend. I don't want like anybody.
You live in the United States now.
Yes.
How's that for material?
Oh, I mean, there's no shortage of that.
What advice would you give to comedians?
What advice could I give? Because of course I did well with my life. Yes, because of course I got it all figured out back. I have no advice for you guys. I mean, God bless you. And but hey, you know what? I mean, you went through 8 years of George W. Bush. And I know that now you look at George W. Bush as a good president, but compared to this guy, anybody is. But I think it will pass. It's really up to. Here's my thing. It's not an advice, but it's an observation. You can laugh as much as you want about Donald Trump and make fun of him, but if you don't go out and vote every 2 years and change the dynamics in the Congress and the Senate, I mean, you can laugh all you want. He's going to be there for 8 years. He's going to be laughing at you. So that's the whole thing. Because like he's not gonna go away because like you throw 15 jokes at him.
But what do you make of comedy in the age of Donald Trump? The latest controversy is Kathy Griffin.
Yeah.
With staged a photo of her with the severed head
and
of the president.
I was very angry because that's our thing. We are the one who behead people. Come on. I mean, like you can't take that away from us too. Okay. I mean, you're even whitewashing beheadings. It's horrible.
I'm going to pivot away from this while I still have a job. Yes, sir. Please, as soon as possible.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank you, Bassem and Sara, for coming here. This is really awesome. I have a question. So as now, I guess, an expatriate and currently speaking as an Egyptian living outside of Egypt, what do you think we can do from the outside, and how realistically effective do you think that will be?
As an Egyptian living outside, I mean, this is one of the hardest questions that I get, because when people ask, what should I do? It's like, I will give you a personal advice. what you should do as an Egyptian living abroad to work on yourself to be the best that you can. So when the country really needs you and it's available, you can come back and make a change. But that right now, I mean, all what you can do is rant on Facebook. Seriously. I mean, this is an honest answer. I mean, I can give you like a very shiny.
I mean, if we stay here, there will be no.
Well, I mean, but
That's a
like,
big if.
or like, well, hopefully you're gonna stay. But like, seriously, I mean, I can give you like a very shiny answer of like, go and organize and do. Honestly, practically, the best thing that you can do is be the best person you can, best at what you can do, and hopefully, if when things change and you are able to come back and make a difference, you will. But seriously, focus on yourself now, and psychologically, it is much better. It's you as an Egyptian, you will understand. You live outside, and Egypt still consumes you. Everything that happens there. It's so you need to take care of yourself. Now I'm being like Dr. Phil.
Thank you.
Can we talk a little bit about offense giving and sort of how you approach the value of giving offense and how it's regarded differently in different cultures? I mean, I know you were arrested literally for offending Islam, among other things. And
although I didn't offend Islam, this was like something even made up. But we were very conscious about the culture difference. We had to be conscious. I mean, here you don't care because you are protected not just by laws, but you're protected by society. There's a backlash, but you are still nobody will come and arrest you from your house. So that's a big difference. So we had to be conscious for one simple reason, because we were speaking to a vast majority of people who are still they might agree with us, but they're very conservative. So you want to win them over. So we didn't want to kind of make the mistake of like making a joke that would be offending for something that they believe in, so they can still continue listening to you. That was the kind of the thin line that we were walking.
So as long as you're making them laugh, you think you can get away with a little bit more?
Yes, but we also had to be very sensitive about certain issues. I mean the stuff that we were discussing in the writers' room, we had to kind of edit half of it.
There's a scene where a very serious man gets on, and there's subtitles, and he says, you know, does God order you to kill Bassem Youssef? Not yet.
Yes.
You know, I mean, like, so presumably you're skating pretty.
He said not now.
Okay.
He said no. There was a sheikh giving a fatwa. People talk to me on the internet and on the phone asking me, is it halal for me to kill Bassem Youssef? And I say, tell him not now, which is interesting. There's actually like a chain of emails with the subject, can I kill Bassem Youssef? And of
if
course
your grandmother forwards you that one more time.
Yes. And of course, all of these emails were sent on Gmail. And
naturally.
And so
this is going really well, I think.
Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you both for being here. I had a question for Sara. You were at the Daily Show for over a decade. And
I'm still there.
Oh.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, you
For now.
arguably have seen sort of this golden age in political satire on television, and I was wondering if you could just speak a bit to what it's been like to write across these three administrations, and what Jon Stewart's hallmarks were that some of these other shows are sort of seeing now.
Well, I've been at the Daily Show since 2005. So when I came in, Bush was president, and most of the time I've been there, Obama's been president. So this new shift is we're still kind of figuring how all that will work in terms of production. But for me, the interesting thing was sort of, because a lot of that time I was doing the film on the side, I definitely didn't have an awareness of how special it was to be able to tell jokes, and not just to work in a place where you can make jokes about whoever is in power or whatever hypocrisies you see, but that there's competitors doing the same thing who make it easier for each one to exist. Like, if there were 5 people doing the same show Bassem was doing, his show would probably still be on the air because there's not so much pressure on any one place. So I think through doing the film, I've had a greater awareness of like an appreciation for this job. And I mean, I obviously cared a lot about the power of satire to begin with, and that's why I wanted to focus on Bassem's story. But I don't think I understood until, and this is speaking on behalf of me, not the show, but this administration, I really started to understand the movie in a new way. I watched Tickling Giants again the weekend after our election at a film festival, and I was like, I've seen this movie 1,000 times, and suddenly I was like, I get that. Like, I related to it in a different way because
I told you we're ahead of you.
yeah, you're ahead of me, of us. And person in the audience said that the movie is a cautionary tale for this country, and I felt like that was correct. That was how I felt too, because the idea isn't, we have a very strong history of free speech in this country, and comedy shows exist, and lots of different people say lots of different things. And what I'm learning through the film is that most people, regardless of political party, actually really value that. They value different things about it, but I've been surprised that different people, someone from Ted Cruz's presidential campaign offered us support, some people from the Coke Network have offered us support, like all different people I didn't expect to reach out.
As in Coca-Cola or Coke Brothers?
The other one.
Okay,
The latter. Coca-Cola is welcome to come on board if they want to.
If
But yeah, all
And
different
the
groups are
poster
coming
is red.
together. The poster is red. But people are supporting the idea of free speech. And I think, like me, a lot of Americans didn't realize until this year that we really are happy that free speech exists, and that now is the time when we have to speak up for it to continue. When you start to see Saturday Night Live being criticized and things like that, that's when you have to speak out. You don't wait for a full-blown dictatorship.
Please.
Hi, thank you both for being here. Sarah, thank you so much for all the work
Oh, thank
for
you.
The Daily Show. I'm a huge fan. Bassem, thanks for being a beacon of revolution and the things that you do. I had a question about how you feel as, you were a doctor, so how do you feel now, looking back at all like your school years and everything like that? Do you ever think, like so many of us Americans do, like, what did I do with my time? Where's my degree going? Does that ever happen to you?
That's a very discouraging question. No, here's the thing. I spent 19 years in medicine, 7 years in medical school and 12 years practicing, and I don't regret a single moment, because it made me the person who I am now. It's a lot of people say, like, how did you discover your talent, and how did you discover your I was not. I was just a nerd. And this is how I managed the show. I was a nerd. I was there first one in the morning and last one to leave. I think my years in the medical profession it was a character building tool. It was amazing, and I think it made me appreciate a lot. I think on a personal level too. I don't speak about that a lot, but I rose to fame extremely fast, and everything was taken from me overnight. I think if I was a much younger person who didn't have that kind of experience, I think I would have killed myself by now, because this was a very extreme experience for anybody. When I rose to fame very fast, I remained grounded, because I thought that all of this is not natural. I'm someone who used to go to hospital shifts, study 18 hours a day. All of this was like weird. So I didn't embrace it. I never embraced it. So when it was taken away, I kind of like, now it sounds normal. This guy's guy. So it's kind of like, I think it guarded me psychologically to go through that journey as a medical doctor, and it helped me on a personal level, on a psychological level, more than anything. So it never went to waste. And plus, I can do emergency procedure now very, very well if you give me the right tools.
I thought it was weird that you went 4 months unemployed with those qualifications.
No, it's one thing happens when you go to entertainment, kind of like you don't want to go to the hard work again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
What would it take for you to go back to Egypt?
Not now. A lot of things, and it has to be like a huge shift, not just because of a certain president, because I think I have burned all my bridges with the current regime. Even if Sisi ceased to exist tomorrow, I was vocal against the whole military regimes in the region. So I think I'm blacklisted for a long time. However, I do miss some stuff about the country, namely two things: mangoes, because you guys don't have mangoes, and if you think that you have mangoes, you don't. They are cucumbers. They taste like cucumber. They have a texture of a cucumber. It's horrible. You don't know what mango is until you come to Egypt. So, with all due respect. And the second thing is our beautiful beaches and coast and kite surfing, because you guys don't have beaches. Maybe in Miami, but like if you are in Los Angeles, it's a beautiful beach, but you can't even touch the water. It's so cold.
Okay.
So
Beaches, mangoes.
beaches and mangoes. If you supply this here, I'm fine.
What about? Are you a political figure?
No,
Why not?
I don't like to think myself of that.
Well, that's not what I asked.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people think of me that way, which I resist very strongly.
Do you think that's productive resistance?
Yes, because it is. I don't like for comedians to be mixed up as politicians.
What is the cost for a comedian, a host, to become more sort of explicitly political?
I mean, I think it takes a lot from your satire. So if you have like someone like Al Franklin, when he did The Shift, he left that career of comedy behind him, and then he became dedicated. That's acceptable. You can shift. You can shift from a doctor to a comedian to a politician. But you can. I think it is counterproductive to be both of them at the same time.
I think also at least in this country, maybe in Egypt, there is a bit of a political act by watching Al Bernameg and sitting in public. But here, I think it's misguided to think that you're doing something and speaking by watching a comedy segment. Like hopefully you enjoy it and it makes you feel less alone and you laugh and maybe you learn something. But unless you do something with that information and act in some way, it's passive. So like if you think that by supporting Bassem you're active politically, you're not. You know,
Right,
like laughing
right.
at a joke is good for you. But like if you want to change something, you have to change it actively.
Can you imagine, though, in your lifetime returning to an Egypt where you would be considered a political figure and where that level of support, that level of fame that you enjoy would be a political asset?
I wouldn't like to be. No, it's horrible. I don't know. I mean, after watching House of Cards, I don't think I want to be a politician. I don't know. It's no.
We may have you back in a year and ask you again.
Yes, but you know what? Just because we're on record, never say never. Bassem 2020. Okay.
There you have it. Please.
All right, this is the question for both of you. In the U.S., we have liberal comedy shows at night. How come we don't have conservative comedy shows?
Because conservatives are not funny. Seriously, they're not. I mean, I'm sorry. Can you name one? There was Dennis Miller,
Yeah.
who
But that was a transition.
Who totally became unfunny
Yeah.
after he supported.
I think they've
There's
tried.
something.
There's shows that have tried to do it, but they haven't found an audience. So I don't know if that's
No, it's not the
being
audience. They
successful.
don't. They
No, but
don't
they
have
haven't found an audience because they haven't been good yet.
Because true comedy goes against taboos, and they are like it's against those fake pillars of society and moralism and that people want to stick to. You kind of like you have to be subversive, and conservatives, the only way they could be subversive is becoming rude. And I know that's pretty much a generalization, but I stick to it. And I don't know. They look at Fox News every time. Fox News, Fox and Friends, or Sean Hannity, or the guy who's harassing people left.
O'Reilly.
I know. So, look at them when they try to be funny. They are offensive and they are horrible. I mean, we can be offensive, but we can be funny. I think. But that's my opinion. I could be wrong.
Well, do you see anybody in Egypt trying to fill your shoes? Who's
There are
more
a lot
aligned
of
to the government.
What? Aligned with the government? Oh, they're horrible. They're the same thing. Still conservative, bad sense of humor. But there are other amazing talents in Egypt, but they're not allowed to cross that line to political satire. They're only allowed to do social comedy.
Please.
Hi.
First of all, thank you so much for being here. I apologize if this question is redundant. I haven't had a chance to see the film yet, so I don't know if it covers sort of what's next.
We'll wait.
You,
Go watch it.
But I wanted to ask, one thing that I think has been striking over the last few years with, the hiring of Trevor Noah and also John Oliver's show is kind of not just this golden age of like political satire, but of outsider perspectives shining like a new view on different issues. And I was wondering if you've thought, now that you are here in the US, of doing something where you're not speaking to an Egyptian audience, but really bringing these issues more to the forefront for an American audience as well.
Sure. I mean, like, this is a classic example of us taking white men jobs, but coming here to America was very. Oh, I'm in Google, so, which is very apparent. Okay. All right. So here's the. I think at the age of 43, I'm reinventing myself maybe for the third time. I'm someone who's not just making a career shift. It's a career shift, a country shift, a language shift. Everything is different, and it is difficult. Like speaking to someone who, like, I don't have perfect command of the English language. I have a very apparent accent. You can hear it, and you don't know if you're going to be accepted. First of all, of how you look, how you sound, or the fact that you are an outsider, and then even if they do, what can you do different than the other outsiders who have already been there before you? So it is very interesting, very scary. I look forward that I would have my own space in the in media in the United States, and hopefully offer a different global perspective to comedy and satire. And especially, like, the way that I feel a little bit different is that if you're gonna talk about people coming from the Middle East, there are a lot of like amazing Middle Eastern comedians, but most of them or all of them have been like raised and born here. I'm the only one who actually come fresh off the boat from that area and the war that everybody is scared of. So hopefully we'll make a change.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hello. Thank you very much both for being here and for all of your work and sacrifices you've had to make to help promote free speech and people thinking for themselves more. So it's a very general question, so please feel free to answer it whatever tangent you feel fit. But you kind of hinted at before the idea of people thinking from authority and not questioning, I assume not questioning the statements of authority for themselves. So I'm wondering, very general question, besides founding my own comedy show or our own, hit comedy show, what things can we do, or what is the direction to promote people to start to think for themselves a bit more and ask more questions?
Yeah, so the whole point for Tickling Giants is not just to be inspired by what he does, but to then internalize that in your own life. So, I mean, I don't know what you're into, but for example, I'll tell you two things I saw this week that I thought were cool. One was there's a woman who she makes fonts. That's her job. And she took Arabic and Hebrew and realized that, so like in English, all you need is the top half of a word, and you know what word's being said. And so she studied both languages and saw that, I forget which was which. I think in Arabic you needed the top half of the word, and in Hebrew you needed the bottom half of the word. So she made a new font that's half Hebrew and half Arabic, with the idea being that two groups, if they can't even talk to each other, how are they going to make peace? And that was just like her own cool thing to express herself. There was also some campaign that I saw where people made a video that was showing how if we treated mental health the same way we treated physical health, how ridiculous it would seem. And it was like all these people with physical ailments being told that they don't need medication and they don't need to do things. And it was like a funny video to express it. I don't know which issues matter to you, but find your own way to bring attention to that issue, and whether it's holding a funny sign at a protest, or whether it's speaking out in a room and asking a question, or whatever your thing is, find a creative way to express that, and a nonviolent way. And then I would also say, because we're in this particular room of a lot of people who know more about the internet than I do, which isn't, don't flatter yourselves, that's not that high a bar. But I assume you're much higher than that as well. for us, we're trying to get the message out about a few things, which are free speech and abuses of power, but then also because of the timing of when this movie happens to be coming out in our country, there's all this talk of Muslim bans. And I want people to realize when you're talking about kind of these scary foreign group of people, Bassem's an example of that. And he's an example of an immigrant who's been exiled. And so we have this thing called hashtag Meet a Muslim at the movies. And the idea is supposed to be that in the same way for a lot of people, Oprah was their first black friend. I'm hoping that if you maybe haven't had an opportunity in your life to meet people in the Muslim community, that this could be an introduction to who we're talking about when we talk about Muslims coming from another country. But what I want is as many people as possible to have conversations about these issues and people with different backgrounds and ideas. So we're trying to get as many people as possible to watch the movie, and then we have a dialogue guide to kind of kick off these conversations. So just as a challenge to this room, if you like the idea of those conversations happening, if you have any suggestions or ways that you could help drive people to the trailer on YouTube, drive people to ticklinggiants.com, and encourage them to see the film and then talk about it.
And how can
would be
people
great.
see the film, Sarah?
So people can see the film if you go to ticklinggiants.com. There are ways driving you to, it's going to be on a bunch of places, including Google Play.
Excellent.
But it comes out on iTunes, Amazon, and directly through ticklinggiants.com.
None like Google Play.
That's right.
Yeah, no one in
It's
here
a
has
little
ever
sharper
used Google
on
Play.
Google Play,
I'm
right?
sorry.
And when does it come out?
So June 6th, it's available on iTunes, and June 13th, it's available everywhere else. And
Including the website plus a 30 minutes outtake.
yeah, if you take the movie from ticklinggiants.com, you'll get 30 minutes of extra footage.
Is there anything that you cut
It's
from
like
the film that you really...
brief scenes of nudity.
Yeah.
And,
We have a
and the
whole nude
outtakes.
version of the film.
Yeah.
actually.
The bath scene
Yeah.
notwithstanding. Is there anything else that you didn't get to include in the film that you wish you had? Or
I mean,
include in
there's
the
a
sequel?
ton of, so there's a few hundred hours of footage. So there were a lot of different
So
stories that we
lots,
could
Dan,
have
is
told.
the
That,
answer,
there
yeah.
was one scene that was really hard to remove, but it just kind of kept not working, which was when the show's canceled and the staff finds out, they're all out of a job. They were supposed to be doing a song and dance on that next episode that they never had a chance to do, which was being critical of the president. And they decided, even though they had all just lost their jobs, they went up to the rehearsal studio and they did the dance with just crazy energy. And this one guy looks in the camera and he says, "The dream will not die. The dream will not die." And I loved that moment. Just that if you're a person who expresses yourself creatively, you can take away free speech, and people may even choose for a period of time to give up their free speech if they think it will make them safe. But once you've tasted free expression, you will always have that desire.
And you cut that?
I know. Think of how good the other stuff was,
Oh my
though.
God, yeah. Okay, great.
That's the worst scene in the movie, so you guys are gonna love
exactly.
the
That's
rest.
the least
Yeah.
moving
But
part
is it in the outtakes?
of the
It's
whole
in the
thing.
outtakes, yes. So.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
We have time for maybe one or two more questions. Conveniently, there are
And before
one or
that,
two people.
since we are in the business of shamelessly promoting ourselves, there in the table there's like
I
my
was
book,
going to get to that.
Revolution for Dummies. Okay, I'm not gonna say
It's available on the back for purchase and at fine bookstores
for
everywhere.
purchase. You
of
have
course.
you're already saving
You
a
have
lot
to
of
pay
money
for it.
on
Your free lunches.
on free lunches.
Yeah.
So yes, you can
Courageous
afford.
activism
These are like
doesn't pay.
4 lattes down there. Like you can get it, and it's funny, and it has never said before, never told before stories. And there's also brief nudity in the books.
Okay.
Last couple of questions.
This one will be lighter than the other one, I promise. So how do you've done this show in Egypt, and now you're here in America. Have you thought of like interesting differences between the sense of comedy that the two cultures have?
It's different everywhere. It's even different within Egypt. So it's even different within the same country with different socioeconomic levels, right? You are from Egypt, and you know that like sometimes what's funny for a guy with a certain education is different for another.
Right. So how about your audience compared to maybe, I don't know, some population here in America?
No, it's different, of course, because even within America, people are like they laugh for different things. For example, people find it very easy to laugh at Friends, right? It's very easy, slapstick, like whatever. But like it takes you a kind of like much more thinking to laugh at Frasier because it's much more complex, and then like another level to laugh at about political satire because you have to be politically aware. So I think I will still be choosing people who are much more aware of political and global issues because that's my shtick. I'm not the best person to do everyday today social comedy here, because there are people who have been here all their lives and they do it much better than I do. Yes.
Thank you. And you, sir, shall have the last word.
So,
Quickly, please.
I'm glad to have the last word. So thank you, Bassem. Thank you, Sara, for coming here and for making that movie. And it's not a question, but as an Egyptian, and as I was following Bassem Youssef from day one, his show, even my son was waiting for it, like, because he has the same last name. So Youssef, Bassem Youssef. We miss his show a lot. When my wife's, I didn't watch the movie yet. When my wife's watched the movie, she was in tears, because every time we talk about him, every time we remember what he has been doing, I mean, we remember this phase in Egypt that we were all like longing for, and now we miss a lot. So, so I just want to give more like thank you for Bassem for what he did, and our hearts with him, like in his exile in the U.S.
Well, you can be your own country and you can still be in exile mentally, right?
Yeah,
you know this.
that's of course. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bassem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a
Wow,
great last
yeah.
word. You
Thank
know
you,
what?
sir. Your check's in the mail.
You know what? Yeah, I paid him. I paid him to do that.
Worth every penny.
Dude, I got you. I got you.
I want
Like,
to point out that this guy was nodding the entire time you explained how bad mangoes here are. So he understood you on a different level as well.
See him
I
after
noticed
class.
that. Yeah.
I can't imagine a better way to end. Thank you, Sarah. You've made a beautiful film.
Thank you.
It, I think, has 100% on Rotten
100%
Tomatoes
on
at the
Rotten
moment.
Tomatoes,
Yeah.
So if you don't believe me and you don't believe the critics, go check it out on June 13th. Tickling Giants. Thank you, Sara Taksler.
Thank you. And if you
Bassem
want
Youssef.
to, I forgot to say, we have a thunderclap. So if you want to donate your social media status on June 13th, you can just go to our Twitter, which is tickling_giants, and sign up now, and then it'll help you spread the word about the movie on June 13th.
Perfect. Thank you all for coming, and thank you both for being here.
buy the book.
Thank you. Thank you.